were in his quarters in Los Angeles. And after Prabhupada would take breakfast in his quarters, I would bring his plates back to the servants' quarters, which were down the hall, and I would clean his plates from there and transfer all of the remaining prasadam to distribute. And I took the orange rinds that he had eaten, which was the very first piece of Mahaprasadam I ever had from Srila Prabhupada back in August of '72, was an orange rind I had taken, and I ate the whole rind because it was Mahaprasadam. But now I was a servant, and I took the orange rind and I threw it into the can. I had a little trash can that I had in there. And I distributed the prasadam. And it was later on in the morning, I was beginning to prepare his lunch. I had my own little refrigerator there, a little 2-burner stove right in the servants' quarters. So I was getting everything ready. I was cutting vegetables. I had a little board. It was probably a 1x12 and about 4 foot long, and it was on 2 cinder blocks. This was the kitchen, and a 2-burner gas stove that had been disconnected, I guess, from gas heat that was in the room, and they connected a gas stove. So I was beginning to prepare his lunch, cutting vegetables. And Srila Prabhupada, as he would do many times, he would go out of his room like in the morning, late morning, and he would walk back and forth in his quarters there and chant. And so he was passing through the hallway. So he walked by, and he saw me cutting vegetables, and he saw the orange rind in the trash can. Well, that was it. He just jumped all over me, just kept saying that. He said, "What is this?" He said, "This moochie thing," he said, "you have sitting there in the can." He said, "You're preparing lunch," he said, "for the deities, and you have in the can eaten orange." And I didn't have time, could not say anything. And there's one thing I never did was say anything to Srila Prabhupada when he was yelling at me. And he said, "Do they do this down in the deity kitchen?" He said, "They have garbage in the can," he said, "and at the same time they're preparing for the deity. Do they do that downstairs?" I said, "No, Srila Prabhupada." "So, but you are doing it up here?" He said, "You are so moochie," he said. And he kept saying over and over again, he said, "You are so moochie." He said, "You are malecha." He said, "How can you do this?" So anyway, this went on for approximately 5 minutes. And it wasn't at this time, but a later time where Prabhupada was he was arguing with me. And he would say that, he would say, "So why do you do this?" And I would say, "I'm just a fool." And at the one time he said to me, he said, "You are no fun," he said, "to argue with," he said, "because you never fight back."
They were doing a fire jagga in, I think it was Vrindavan temple or something, some temple in Srila Prabhupada. The temple had already been established, but they were doing a fire jagga. And one of these, I think it was one of Srila Prabhupada's godbrothers, it was in the middle of the fire jagga, and he leaned over to Prabhupada and he said, "Srila Prabhupada, they're doing it all wrong, they're doing it all wrong." And Prabhupada leaned back and he looked at him very calmly and he said, "That's all right, they're just practicing."
And we were taking an interior flight on Air India, and we got on the plane, and while everyone was getting seated, we were sitting down, and they had the music very loud. It was Indian classical music, sitar and tabla. And I'm sitting down, and Prabhupada's sitting next to me, and he said, he said, "Do you like this music?" And I just looked at him, and I thought, this is a trick question or something. It's like, because it was nice music, and I thought, but this is not Krishna conscious music, this is Maya, So I just stopped, and I didn't say. And I didn't even answer him. I just didn't have the ability to answer him, because I hated to be wrong. This was part of my difficulty. I could never answer honestly, because I didn't want to say the wrong thing. And so finally he said, "This is very nice music." He said. Then of course I was, "Yes, Srila Prabhupada, this is very nice music." But I didn't want to be in that position of saying the wrong thing. And that's probably why I didn't say too much while I was with Srila Prabhupada.
Prabhupada was very sick in Vrindavan, and that time our party was traveling in North India. In fact, we were in Badrikashram when we heard Prabhupada was getting more sick. We rushed back to Vrindavan, and soon upon our arrival there, we were allowed to go into his quarters for darshan. So we spent quite some time with him. He was lying on bed for months. He was already on the bed. But he seemed to be very enthusiastic to hear the Sankirtan reports, and he was inquiring, so which book is selling the most, and what is your daily collection? He was making all these inquiries. As we had just returned from Badrikashram, in a humorous way, I mentioned to Prabhupada that Srila Prabhupada, we presented your Bhagavad Gita as it is to Srila Vyasadeva. Because in Badrikashram there's a cave of Srila Vyasadeva, and he is supposed to be residing there. So we had visited the cave. Of course we did not see him. We were carrying Bhagavad Gita, and we imagined that Srila Vyasadeva saw it. So we said, we presented your Bhagavad Gita to Srila Vyasadeva. Prabhupada was pleased to hear that.
On so many occasions, Prabhupada gave me things. One in particular I can remember was very funny. Was after I was married and had a child, and I became Prabhupada's servant. I was traveling with him. So my son now, Mayapur Chandra Das, was about 6 months old, and we were in Los Angeles. And Prabhupada called me in his room, and he said, call Nanda Kumar, I want to see him. So I went and I found him. He was in the community. And a few minutes later we came back, and we both went into the room and paid our obeisances, and Nanda Kumar came in. So I was about to get up and leave. He said, no, he said, sit down, he said. So he said, get me my white bag. So Prabhupada's white bag, this of course is something else that was very special. When Prabhupada traveled, he had his luggage, and we had our luggage, and then he had his white bag. Well, Prabhupada's white bag is where he kept all his very important effects, whether they be bank books for Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, Mayapur Vrindavan Trust, his personal effects, everything that was on his desk, his pens, were given to him. He might have a gold cross pen given by a disciple, his tilak mirror container, his silver. So that was all in this bag. And some money that he would keep. Sometimes he would always keep just a little bit of money with him. And he said, so get me this white bag. So I got the white bag and I brought it back into his room. We were sitting there, and he went into his white bag and he took out a $50 bill, and he gave it to Nanda Kumar, and he took out another one and he gave it to me. He said, these are for your children, he said. And Nanda Kumar immediately, of course, objected. No, Srila Prabhupada. He said, I can't take this from you. And Prabhupada said, it's not for you. He said, it's for your son. Immediately stopped the objection, which Prabhupada was very good at. If he wanted to stop an objection from someone, he could stop it very quickly.
One time there was a little boy who came up to Srila Prabhupada to get a flower. And there's a famous picture, and the little boy is standing there, and he's a little boy, he's about 5 or maybe younger, and he had a little shaved head with a seeker and everything. His name was Janaka. He was in Australia. And Prabhupada wouldn't let the flower go. He had the flower there in his hand, and the boy came to get the flower, and Prabhupada wouldn't let the flower go. And the boy had the flower, and Prabhupada had the flower, and the boy realized that everybody was looking at him, and he didn't know what to do. Should he just release his grip and go? He wanted the flower, but he didn't know if he should grab it. And Prabhupada knew that, and he was holding it, and he was watching that boy, and this very playful grin on his face. And so he eventually gave the boy the flower, but it was just a playful little incident.